Good evening. I'm Nisa Petrilli.
I'm Jay Kaplan.
I'm Steve Ferguson.
And I'm Sean Roman.
And this is On the Sports Lines for February 18th, 2016. With the All-Star game in the rearview mirror, the NBA second half gets underway tonight. We'll look at the big questions the Knicks and Nets need to answer, the Warriors' quest for 73 wins, and the case for 3 contenders to Golden State's crown. We'll also tell you who will be the key players for the Rangers, Islanders, and Devils as the NHL stretch run begins. As always, we want to hear from you, so email us at fanspeak@onthesportslines.com, send your tweets to @onthesportslines, and your posts to facebook.com/onthesportslines. The Knicks start the second half 23-32 and 5 games out of the Eastern Conference's 8th playoff spot. They've lost 6 straight and 9 of 10, costing head coach Derek Fisher his job. Jay, to say that the Knicks have some big questions to answer is an understatement.
A little bit.
What's the biggest in your mind?
The biggest in my mind is, will Phil Jackson finally change his plan if he sticks around? There have been rumors about it, just how long the Zen Master is going to stick around, though it does seem like he'll be here for at least another year. So I think he needs to do a little introspection and finally come to the conclusion the rest of us have. Phil, stop looking for someone who can coach the triangle because you're the only one who can and you've decided not to, and find someone who can just flat out coach. Derek Fisher wasn't ready. Kurt Rambis is just not the answer, and sorry, Phil, Luke Walton just ain't coming here. I wouldn't leave Golden State. So there's a reason that Carmelo Anthony, when he was entertained leaving the Knicks, went out to Chicago, and that was Tom Thibodeau. Everyone knows what Tibbs brings to the table. Starts with defense, an area the Knicks, who are 20th in the NBA in defensive rating, could stand to improve just a little bit. Can he coach a singular offensive talent? I give you Derrick Rose,
Yes.
who became the NBA, the youngest MVP under his watch. Can he coach a dynamic, multifaceted big man? I give you Yannick Noah, who flourished under his watch. Now, Tibbs won 50 games 3 times in 5 years in Chicago, took the Bulls to the playoffs each year, was coach of the year after his first season. He has ties to the Knicks as an assistant under Jeff Van Gundy from 96 to 03. He may not be the best choice for Phil's triangle, but he's the best choice for Melo, Porzingis, and the Knicks.
I totally agree. Well, for me, the biggest question with the Knicks is the point guard scenario. And unfortunately, at the deadline, they weren't able to get a point guard like a Jeff Teague or Mike Conley. In the offseason, I think they'll probably address that need. But right now, we're stuck with Jose Calderon, who is slow, can't play defense well, and is reluctant to shoot. Jerian Grant might have the ability to do it, but he's a little young right now, and he may have to play the backup role. So I think that's the area, one of the areas the Knicks have to get better at, and I think in the offseason they'll do it.
We'll see how much recruiting Melo is able to do.
Yeah, he'll have to.
To me, the question for the Knicks is, what is the next step in the development of Porzingis, who has turned out to be the silver lining on what is another terrible season? And when he was drafted, we had our little show, and you guys absolutely mauled Porzingis as a pick. And I was like the only one. I'm always the contrarian, but I was like, let's wait a minute. Let's give Phil Jackson the benefit of the doubt. He studies this type of thing. There's something he sees in them in terms of having the tools of the trade. And that's what Porzingis has brought. And what needs development for him, which we see, is his defense. And that's a lot about effort and motivation. So that can be coached into him. And it's also internal. We have to see his toughness as the year plays out. He's looked quite a bit fatigued at the end of the games.
The rookie wall I was telling you about.
It's the wall that he's hit.
So I expect to see him to play 30, 35 minutes. And also, I mean, the one area that doesn't need improvement is shooting from the outside. That's absolutely incredible. But when he gets fed by Melo and he's on the inside, he needs to improve right there. And I expect that to be worked on in practice and in the games. And we'll watch that develop as the season goes forth.
We'll see. Well, the Nets are in even worse shape than the Knicks. They start the second half 14-40 and are very much lottery bound. And they're looking for both a head coach and a GM. Steve, the Nets would seem to have even bigger questions to answer than the Knicks. What tops your list as the biggest?
Well, Nisa, their biggest problem to me is the fact that they don't have any draft picks until 2019.
Yeah.
And that's horrible. when you pick
They
up,
gambled. They really
gambled
did.
big time getting.
Can't say they didn't try.
Now, they definitely tried, and they're having Pierce
Fail.
and Garnett here, but you have to give them an F for their effort, as it turned out. And the reality is, unlike playing for the Knicks, where you have Madison Square Garden, the heart of Manhattan, Brooklyn's a great place to play, and they have a nice arena at the Barclays Center. But the NBA talent that this team has is literally Brook Lopez and Thaddeus Young, with Joe Johnson on his last leg. So this team needs a lot of help in a lot of areas, and you can go from GM to players. They need a lot of help everywhere.
Well, I've always been of the philosophy that an owner should hire a good general manager and then get the hell out of his way.
Right.
I warned the Nets what they were getting into with Billy King. I suffered through him in Philadelphia. They didn't listen to me.
No, unfortunately.
They had a lot of qualified candidates on their wish list, and they lucked out that today, in fact, their number one choice, Sean Marks, the assistant GM of the Spurs, accepted their offer.
All right.
He's a former player and assistant coach in San Antonio, and he's been learning at the feet of one of the best in the business, Spurs GM R.C. Buford. I don't know if he would have been my choice. My choice probably would have been Brian Colangelo, who built solid organizations
He
in
would
both
have been really
Phoenix.
good.
Where he oversaw a 33-win turnaround from one year to the next, and Toronto, where he oversaw a 20-win jump. He won Executive of the Year when he was with both teams. Would have been my choice. Marks has a very tough job ahead of him. Like you said, Steve, no draft picks until
no draft
2019.
picks for 3 years.
Not a lot of wiggle room.
No.
But he's coming from what's widely considered the best organization in the NBA.
Yeah.
He's going to bring their philosophy, their way of doing things, their code, their mantra. If he can get for everybody, from ownership down to the players, down to the equipment managers and the ball boys, to buy into the Spurs way, I think he has a chance to turn this organization around. He's got a tough job. The best thing for Prokhorov to do, you gave the man the job, you got faith in him, get out of his way and let him try and do his job.
Absolutely.
Yeah, interestingly, Marks was 12 years in the NBA, but mostly a bench player. He didn't get a lot of minutes.
He didn't.
So while he was on the bench, he was really studying the game.
Probably.
Spurs hired him in like 2012, right after he retired, and he moved up quickly within that organization. He's a GM already. He's from New Zealand.
Wow.
6'10", by the way. Went to Cal, played college there.
Who's he hiring as a head coach,
That's
Sean?
going to
Yeah,
be
that's a great
that's going to be the
question.
big question for the Nets going forward, and I think that comes down to two candidates. I think David Blatt, ex-Cavaliers coach, with an absolutely an excellent record. I mean, who gets fired with a 700 winning percentage?
Yeah,
Guy who can't
That's
get along with LeBron.
Yeah, that's
Good point.
unfortunate, but
so
true.
I think Blatt is the top candidate because he has coached the Russian national team, and the Nets owner is a Russian patriot
Yes,
and
he
ran
is.
for the presidency over there.
That's right.
So he's definitely going to be looking at Blatt. He's also coached two professional teams in Russia, and also another assistant coach on the Spurs, Messina. He'll be looking at him as that's his second choice,
Yeah, there are a
probably.
lot of people who
who's
felt
coached
that when Marks came over that Messina would not be far behind.
because Messina coached pretty much the dominant team in Russia, the Moscow team. I mean, that's like the New York or LA team that's actually doing pretty well over there. So I mean, if you're it's like Manchester United type of thing. So Prokhorov has a close relationship with him. That's the two directions that he's going, and it may not even be Marks' choice. It may come straight from ownership to go
It
after
may,
those two people because of the connection.
What
And
what
he-
about Thibodeau? Do you think he might be a candidate for the job, too?
Oh, absolutely. No
Yeah.
question about it. I mean, he's going to go with either one of those two, or I think he'll be his third choice.
I
don't know if they could afford. Well, what can't Prokhorov afford?
Yeah,
Right, that's
exactly.
true. I think Blatt's more in their wheelhouse because this is going to be a young team.
Yeah.
So I think he's better suited to that. That's originally why he was brought into Cleveland, because supposedly that was the type of team he was going to be dealing with.
Interesting.
The other reason I don't think Thibodeau is as much of a choice for the Nets is because Tibbs is better with a veteran team. Maybe one or two young guys or young veterans, but he's not good. This is not the situation for him. The Knicks are probably a better situation
They
for
probably
him
are.
if
More-
Phil can get out of his own way.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. The defending champion Golden State Warriors start the second half in NBA best 48-4. The question facing them is not so much whether they can repeat, but if they can break the record of 72 wins set by the 95-96 Jordan-led Bulls along the way. Sean, can they get 73 wins? And if so, are they the greatest team in NBA history?
They have to go 25-5
Yep.
right now to break that record. So I think that there's no question that they could do that. If they do that and get through the hellish playoff series that they'll have to go through, which could include Cleveland, maybe even, like I said at the beginning of the year, the Raptors, if they make it at the end. I still don't think that they would be the best team ever. I believe that 96 Bulls team would be because of where that Bulls team came from. Michael Jordan led a team to 3 straight championships, the greatest player, with Scottie Pippen as his assistant. Then he decides to go play baseball. That's almost unimaginable to see someone take up a different discipline like that. He comes back after a year and a half, gets the Bulls to a 5 seed, and then the next year, the Bulls pick up Rodman. That is one of the key differences on that particular 96 team. Rodman at the top of his game, best rebounder in history. Incredible bench with Kerr and Kukoc. I don't think any team can match up with that particular team from 96. And what do they do after they win that championship in 1996? They win 69 games the next year. That particular core of teams, I just don't see any of the teams I've ever seen as being better than them.
Yeah. I don't think so either. I mean, yeah, I think they can win 73 games because they're a terrific offensive team. They're first in the league in scoring, third in defense. But this team, unlike the Bulls, and the Bulls didn't have the greatest centers. They had guys like Wennington, and they
Longley.
and Luke Longley. But they had Cartwright, and Cartwright averaged about 13 points a game for them. So when you look at the Warriors center position, that's an area of weakness. And I think the Spurs will have a much older team, but they have the kind of team that can give them a hard time. When you look at the big 3 they have, and now Kawhi Leonard's becoming a star.
But do you think the Bulls are the biggest team of all time? Because you and I were talking offset, and you were talking about Bird's Celtics.
I would say, if you ask me the best teams, I'd say probably Bulls first, Celtics second, and this team might be third. But to me, they're going to have to win another championship for me to put them in the list.
I'll answer the first question first. Do I think they can win 73 games? I think so. Their stretch coming out of the break is going to be telling. They have a 6-game road trip, including 2 back-to-backs. 7 of their first 8 are against teams that are 500 or better. Once they get past those 6 road games, 17 of their final 24 are at home, where currently they're undefeated at 24-0. Here's my thing. If the Bulls are the measuring sticks, well, here's the comparison. Curry's Jordan, flat out.
Okay.
Klay Thompson is Pippen. Draymond Green is Rodman without the crazy, and a better all-around game.
He does have a better game.
And I don't think the comparison is a stretch if you're comparing eras, which is, even in the NBA in this day and age is still not easy. The Warriors' depth to me is what gives them an edge over the Bulls. I will take Iguodala over Kukoc. I'll take Bogut over Wennington or Longley. I'll take Harrison Barnes over Ron Harper.
But nobody over Rodman.
I will take Draymond Green over Rodman because he doesn't have the crazy
game.
Warriors have 11 guys averaging 11 minutes per game and routinely play a 10-man rotation. The Bulls needed Jordan and Pippen to average between them 37 minutes a game. The Warriors are running circles around the NBA. Curry and Pippen are only averaging 34. 3 minutes less a game by each of your top 2 players over an 82-game season means the best backcourt in the NBA has much less mileage come playoff time. I hear what you guys are saying, but in my opinion, if the Warriors get 73 and they repeat, and they have to do both.
Yeah, they have to repeat.
With just about the same team that won over 60 games last year and ran through the NBA, in my impression, if they manage to pull this off as the back half of a back-to-back, yeah, they're the greatest team of all time.
But they have to win the whole thing in order for this to work.
For me, they would be.
Okay.
The power in the association may not be as lopsided toward the Western Conference as in years past, but there are only 3 contenders with a real shot to stop the Warriors from repeating: the Cavs, the Spurs, and the Thunder. Our guys are going to make the case for each team. Sean, make the case for the Cavs.
Well, last year the Cavaliers relied completely on LeBron's vulnerable back. And he did everything he could to will his own hometown to its first championship in over half a century. And this particular year, he's going to have more weapons. And he, with his effort of 35 points a game, a tremendous amount of assists and rebounds, he led in all 3 categories, which was a first. He will also have a healthy Kevin Love, who wasn't even there. And also a healthier Kyrie Irving. I mean, he's been playing about 30 minutes a game, and also right before the All-Star break scored 30 points. With these 2 particular players, that to me definitely equals at least 1 more win, so it will all come down to a magical Game 7 if they meet in the finals.
Which would be played in Golden State, so it would be very interesting.
That would be interesting. Well, for me, I'm going to say...
but I think you need to let me go first.
Yes,
Steve.
Tell me about the Thunder.
I'm going to tell you about the Thunder. I'll make the case for them. Here it is. They were 40. They're 40-14 coming into the second half for two very big reasons. Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook. Both have been healthy the entire season so far, and it shows. Durant's averaging almost 28 points, 8 rebounds, and 4.5 assists. That's MVP conversation numbers.
Yes.
But his running mate, maybe having an even better all-around season. 24 points, almost 8 rebounds, 10 assists. That's Magic Johnson, Oscar Robertson type numbers.
Yes, it is.
Okay, the Thunders are second to the Warriors in both points per game and offensive rating. They're a team that can go bucket for bucket with Golden State. Their overall team defense could stand to improve. They're 16th in points allowed, 13th in defensive rating. Serge Ibaka, however, has been his usual rim-protecting self, averaging over 2 blocks. And Westbrook leads the NBA in total steals. So they can place enough defense, I think, to give the Warriors fits. The Thunder have benefited from the league's easiest schedule so far, but it is about to become the toughest. 17 of their final 28 are on the road. They have 10 against the 5 other teams that are playing 600 ball or better, including 2 more with Golden State. Here's the key for them. They need to be able to keep the 3 seed that they have now, which means they would not play the Warriors until the conference finals. And in a 7-game series, anything can happen, especially when you have 2 of the NBA best players on your roster. If those guys are playing at an elite level, they can knock the Warriors out.
8
Wow,
losses so far,
interesting.
sure.
Steve, go for the Spurs.
You know, I'm going to take the Spurs because I think if any team can spoil Golden State's party, it might be this team. When you look at the fact that they've had the 3 terrific NBA players, Parker, Ginobili, and Duncan, for years, and you add that to Kawhi Leonard, who you really can say now is the big 4 because he's becoming a superstar in his own right. Then you add LaMarcus Aldridge and David West. And
Yeah,
these guys
huge offseason.
unselfishly came to this team getting paid a lot less money than would have gotten from anywhere else. But when you look at the fact that Greg Popovich is a tremendous coach, I think he's the best coach in the league, and that they've won 4 championships with him, he knows how to run this team. He knows when to give guys rest. And I think this team, when the postseason comes, they will be ready for Golden State.
I got to tell you, if I have to pick among the 3 of them, Sean, I kind of have to go with you in the Cavs for one reason. The Cavs don't have to go through as much of a gauntlet in the Eastern Conference playoffs, if you look at it on paper, as the Warriors would. Think about this. The Warriors have to go through the rest of that conference, 5 other teams playing 600 ball, and they would either get, if the seeding stays, which means the Spurs stay at 2 and the Thunder stay at 3, they would wind up having to go through one of those 2 teams in the conference finals before they even get to a Cleveland in the finals. And who knows how beat up they would be by the time they face LeBron and company. And you're right, Sean. LeBron having a big 3 scenario once again, they're going to be They're going to be a lot tougher out this year.
That's a great point. Yeah, I agree. Well, unlike their hardwood neighbors, New York's hockey teams are in much better shape. All are very much in the hunt for berths in the Stanley Cup playoffs. We're going to take a lightning round look at each team and tell you the key player for them down the stretch. Steve, who's the key player for the Devils?
Well, for me, it's definitely Corey Schneider. This guy was the backup goaltender for a couple of years to Martin Brodeur, and he, frankly, has just about eclipsed him in terms of what he's done in his first season. His goals against is 2. He has played phenomenal goal for them, and he's really the main reason why this team is a contender. And I would have to say, without him, they definitely wouldn't be anywhere close to the playoffs.
Well, Jay, tell me who's the key player for the Rangers?
A key player for the Rangers is not a guy you might automatically think of, and that's defenseman Mark Stahl. The Rangers have been playing solid hockey this season, currently 3rd in the Eastern Conference. They're 2 points out of 2nd, which is pretty much what everybody's playing for because nobody's catching the Caps.
That's right.
Their offense has been fine. They're 5th in the NHL in goals scored, but a defense that's 13th in goals allowed could use some improvement, and I think it starts on the blue line, and it starts with Stahl. He's a legit top 6 defenseman, but he hasn't played like it, at least not to the level that head coach Alain Vigneault expects, and he has called Stahl out in public about it. Now, his stat line is 2 goals, 11 assists, only 13 points, but that's not a big deal. He's not an offensive defenseman. It's the +3 in the plus-minus rating that kind of has me concerned. The other 5 guys who make up the top 6 for the Rangers are all +7 or better. Now, he's had coverage and puck management issues, which has led to some issues with confidence, which has led to him being less aggressive. Now, with Captain Ryan McDonough, one of the other top 6, recovering from a concussion, the Blue Shirts need Stahl to step up and be his usual stealth, which is an expert shutdown defenseman who uses his 6'4", 207-pound body and long reach to win one-on-one battles against the opposition's number 1 line, and shields the puck, helps the Rangers get out of their own end on the attack. He is the guy that they put out there against the number 1 scoring line of the other team, and he needs to play like it. You need 6 top-flight defenders in order to make a deep playoff run. The Rangers will need Stahl to return to form if they're going to bring home Lawrence Stanley's chalice.
Agreed.
It's true. So, Sean, who's the key player for the Islanders?
It's a surprise. Thomas Greiss. I mean, this guy has basically been the Islanders' MVP this year. 16, 6, and 2. They got Halak a couple of years ago in a 4-year contract, and he had a very respectable year last year. The defense was just not mature enough to help him throughout that playoff series with Washington, which was extraordinarily competitive, and down the stretch one, which they're entering into right now. But this year, Thomas Greiss, 30 years old from Germany, he has really picked up where Halak, it's not that he's been bad, he just hasn't been getting the support and he hasn't been as durable as you would expect. And you're going to see a lot of both goalies because the Islanders have to play 27 games in this compacted last 2 months or so of the season. So they're going to be switching on and off. Each of them are going to be getting their own chance to play, but I think Greiss is going to come out as the guy who's going to be starting in the first round of the playoff series.
Wow. Really? You think he's going to get the start ahead of Halak?
Really?
Because goal against per average, 2.16. His save percentage, 9.31. Compare that to Halak's 2.42 and 9.14 percentage. He is just on paper doing better right now. I mean, if you looked at it the other night, one of Halak's worst games was against Carolina, and that was in one of those games where the defense just did not show up. And sometimes they don't give him that type of scoring support that Greiss has been getting. But 16, 6, and 2, you have a goalie with that type of percentage is going to be used more than the other one down the stretch. That's going to be your starting goalie, I ultimately think.
My only concern there is that the Halak is the one with playoff experience and has proven that if needs be, he can, to use one of my favorite phrases, stand on his head to win a series by himself. Greiss has not faced that kind of pressure. It'll be interesting to see how he responds if he's put in the 1 or 1A position.
Yeah, and I've also liked to see, I'd like to see the Islanders captain finally win a playoff series. That would be nice. I mean, since he was the #1 draft pick, I think he's been to 2 playoff series, and last year's was hardly fought, but they just came up a little bit short because I think they lost the last game of the season to Carolina and didn't have the home field advantage.
Nope.
Well, that music means it's time for the 3-minute warning. Sean, lead us off.
Walking down the street to work, I heard the playful chant behind me.
Let's go Rangers!
It was a construction worker who saw this hat and my Islander scarf. And it was the first time in a long time anybody cared. It brought home that the great Ranger-Islander rivalry is primed to take center stage in New York City sports. Both teams have been in the playoff hunt all season, and each has 4 Stanley Cups. The Rangers only have one since World War II. They won during the Coolidge, FDR, and Hoover administrations. The Islanders haven't had any since Reagan's second term. The Islanders lead the playoff series between them 5-3, but the Rangers best the Islanders in regular season competition. The Rangers have had a fantastic past half-decade, but no Stanley Cups. The Islanders haven't won a playoff series in over 22 years. Well, it's now time for fate to bring the two together in one of the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, and for fans to enjoy the most breathtakingly bitter competition this city has to offer.
A defenseless all-star game. Great games with superstar players who can score touchdowns, score goals, or hit home runs, or blow away the side can be all-star games. But baseball seems to be the only sport that captures all the elements of a real all-star game. But rest assured, the NBA's joke of a game just doesn't cut it these days.
Damn.
These guys have nothing on the Harlem Globetrotters because they're clowns who brazenly shame the sport. 196 points and an all 7-letter word becomes a distant memory. It's called defense. Sting and Drake were the entertainment, but in exchange, what we got was a pathetic, high-scoring, prideless exhibition. Open three-pointers and slam dunks don't do it for me. Back to the future. Let defense reign.
One of the shake-my-head moments for me this past NBA All-Star Weekend was the announcement of the finalists for the Basketball Hall of Fame. Topping the list were Shaquille O'Neal, Yao Ming, and Allen Iverson. Iverson was a singular NBA player both on and off the court during his career. He redefined what it meant to be a point guard. Steph Curry, Derrick Rose, and Russell Westbrook are who they are, in part because of who Iverson was. AI was relentless, driving into the paint, bouncing off big men, scoring, dishing, or drawing fouls. He did not settle for jump shots, and he did it all while being a one-man gang for the 76ers. He averaged 26.7 points per game during his career. That's 7th all time. And he topped 30 points per game 4 times. He won 4 scoring titles and an MVP. He was also top 5 in steals for 7 straight years, number 1 for 3 straight. Jordan was the only other player to produce points and steals like that. Off the court, Iverson was notorious for his t-shirts, do-rags, baseball caps, and gold chains in an era in which the NBA culture went from merely hip-hop to thug, prompting David Stern to institute the dress code we have today. He also had public feuds with the Philly media and his coaches, most notably Larry Brown, which inspired the whole, "We're talking about practice, not a game, not a game." He doesn't seem to have changed much. He showed up to the nominees' event in a baseball cap, do-rag, t-shirt, jeans, and loaded with gold chains. All I could think when I saw that was, we're talking about nomination, not induction, not induction. We'll see you in July, AI, in Springfield. You remember where the Hall of Fame is.
Roger Goodell is at it again with his latest proposal of essentially a yellow card system where a player would be ejected from the game if they commit 2 personal fouls. I'm usually in support of Goodell's ideas, especially when player safety is the goal, but he took this one a little too far. Personal fouls happen very frequently, and they aren't always done on purpose or to cause harm to another player. This new rule would cause an epidemic of ejected players, many of whom don't deserve it. Goodell's intentions are good here, but there has to be some middle ground. Some alternate ideas being discussed include adding a flagrant aspect to the foul in order for it to qualify for ejection, or having 5 personal fouls over the course of the season equal a 1-game suspension. Even just increasing it to 3 or 4 fouls in a game would be a better option. 2 personal fouls equaling an ejection is just too strict of a rule. It might even tempt opposing teams to goad a player into committing a foul just to get him out of the game. It's counterproductive to the crux of the issue, which is player safety. Goodell is on the right track, but this proposal needs some serious editing before it'll have any chance of being approved. For Jay Kaplan, Steve Ferguson, and Sean Roman, I'm Nisa Petrilli. Thanks for spending part of your evening with us. We'll see you on March 3rd for another edition of On the Sports Lines. Remember, if you want to see this show again or catch up on any of the ones you might have missed, check us out at youtube.com/onthesportslines. And check out our blog at onthesportslines.blogspot.com. Good night, everyone.
Hey,
Good
everybody.
night.